Jrue Holiday and his availability. Are the Warriors in on these conversations? What would a deal look like? And furthermore, Monte Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area, dialed in and writing about how it also presents a dilemma for the Warriors. So first off, Monte, I know it's been a super busy day. Thank you so much for coming on.
Yes, sir. Had to be here. Glad to be here.
Yeah, so let's hear it. Let everybody know why this is a dilemma.
Well, that's several levels of that. I mean, beginning with the fact that the Warriors have had Chris Paul for 12 weeks. He hasn't played a game. He has worked out with his teammates. They have had numerous conversations between Chris Paul and the coaching staff, Chris Paul and the teammates, Chris Paul in the front office. He has been welcomed into their culture, and they have sang his praises from the day that they brought him in. Just this week, I mean, Steve Kerr was going on about how much he wanted to coach him. And so they've invested into Chris Paul. And they've sold this guy to a fan base that, frankly, had no love for Chris Paul. It's like he is an enemy, to Warriors fans, to Dub Nation. So they made it clear why he's here, and I think it's pretty transparent. He's a player who can really work with young players and work with athletic players. I ask people all the time, I said, where was Blake Griffin before and after Chris Paul? Where was DeAndre Jordan before and after Chris Paul? He did wonders for DeAndre Ayton in Phoenix. He made him what he is now, and which is a really good center. And so Chris is one of those guys that has a way of improving the guys around him by spoon-feeding them easy baskets, which often plays into those guys' confidence, and also which then leads to often extra effort. Guys can sometimes get disappointed by not having enough minutes or shots, and then their defense suffers and so forth. Well, Chris is the guy who reads that and says, okay, I'm going to get my guy some buckets, get him going. So the rationale for bringing Chris Paul to the Warriors, it makes sense. They've been worried about the non-Steph minutes for years. Well, you got Chris Paul now. He should be able to handle those non-Steph minutes. And so that's the thing. They've done all of this work to build him up to the fan base and to themselves, and they've explained why he's necessary. So to trade him now for a guy like Jrue Holiday, who is a great player, the best two-way player in the league, you have to ask yourself, if you're an NBA player, what are the Warriors doing here? I mean, they've gone on about how much they love Chris Paul, and they've already traded him without playing a game, for a guy who is going to make more money and has more years on his contract. If you're the Warriors, perception is important to you. And so for those of us who know the Warriors before Lacob, Gruber, and so on, we knew that there wasn't a lot of respect for that franchise back in those days. And one of the first things that the new ownership did back in 2010 is they set out a path of, we're going to build some credibility around this place. We're going to make people respect us. And they've done it. They did it from day one. They're bringing in people like Rick Welts and Jerry West. And so it's like, okay, it's a new day. I mean, we're doing things a different way. And they've become a respected organization throughout the NBA. Andre Iguodala was in Denver. Decided, no, I want to play with the Warriors. I see where they're headed. Boom, he comes over. Kevin Durant had 6 different franchises chasing him. He said, I want to play with the Warriors. I see where they're going. I like what they're doing. I like who they are. I like their management, ownership. I like the way they do things. And so bringing Chris Paul over now, it's like, okay, bring him into this culture, see how he does, give him a year. It's a 1-year contract. And it's a 1-year rental in terms of what I can see. And that way you give this team a chance to see what they can get from a guy like Jonathan Kuminga. See what they can get from a guy like Moses Moody. Dario Saric is a great addition, too. So I think Chris Paul fits what they do. And I just think if the Warriors decide that all of a sudden he doesn't, after telling us why he does, I think if you're an NBA player in the league, you're going, what are the Warriors doing here? I mean, did they run there's a backdoor move here going on here? So you don't want to do anything that I think could impact your credibility. And right now, the Warriors have pretty high credibility. If they trade Chris Paul today, tomorrow, it's a little different perception because, yeah, we see you got Jrue Holiday, terrific player, but we saw what you did with Chris Paul. And so that's the part where I think if the Warriors were to think about this, that's the part they have to say, it's okay to do it. Or say, no, we can't do it because we don't want to risk it. There is a risk.
Great breakdown from Monte Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area there. And I do remember, Monte, the days before Lacob and Goober and the lack of credibility. And he did a great job of outlining exactly what they've done rehab-wise to bring them to the preeminent spot in the association. Does the very overture of this move or the hint of it, does that do any damage, or would it have to actually be a consummated trade for this credibility to be called into question?
No, I don't think the thought of it. I mean, I would think the Warriors would actually consider this on first glance, because the way the Warriors are built now is that they're always looking for a way to get better, always, and they're asking them. They would ask themselves, does this make us better? And what are the pros and cons of making a move like this? What do we gain? What do we lose? And so right now, I don't think the Warriors would make this move, and it's not just because of the risk of maybe losing some credibility points, but there's some other issues at work here too. Like I said, the contracts are different, and so I don't think it's a big deal if nothing happens. And right now, there's nothing to indicate to me that the Warriors are, going through all kinds of evaluations to decide that they're going to chase after Jrue Holiday. Now, if that were to change, again, that means the Warriors will have had to consider the pros and cons of the deal, and also have to consider how it looks. And like I said, perception is important. So I think right now the Warriors are in a safe space.
Monte Poole, NBC Sports Bay Area with us, Willard and Dibs, 95.7 The Game. Let's go down this road, though, a little bit further. Let's say there is an openness to this. There are conversations. Do the finances even work, Monty, with the fact that like Jrue has got potentially, with the player option, he's got 2 more years. There's a Clay extension looming. Does that even work together?
It gets really dicey there. That's another element here, is the contracts don't really line up. Chris Paul's contract is exactly what the Warriors want that contract to be. It's a 1-year contract. They get to $31 million, and they can walk away. And so that definitely was a factor in why they chased him in the beginning, back in June. So I think that at this stage, when you look at all the other issues, the cap situation, the second apron situation, all these other things are factors why you wouldn't want to make that trade for Jrue Holiday, because, again, that's a contract that's built in. You're built into that beyond a year. So it's really one that if the Warriors were to make that trade, I'd be stunned for a variety of reasons, and that's just one more of them.
The other piece to it would be the cost that it would enact on the Warriors just to bring him in. If it was Kuminga and Moody and picks along with Chris Paul, would that be too rich for your blood or their blood? Or the fact that so many teams seem to be interested, where do you think that puts the price to bring in Jrue Holiday?
Yeah, it's going to be pretty steep. I mean, the Warriors they could do it. Technically, they could do it. I mean, Chris Paul would definitely be a part of that trade. But again, you're losing a contract that you like, and you're adding one that you don't like so much. So, and it wouldn't be just Chris Paul. To make the money work, they'd have to throw in another player. And if that player is Kuminga, then the Warriors really have blown up almost all of their past 3 drafts. So, yeah, I know they're all in on this year. That's evident when they traded Wiseman, Jordan Poole, Ryan Rollins, and Patrick Baldwin Jr. It's like, okay, screw the future. We're about now. And I get that. I understand that. I see why they're doing it. But that's why Chris Paul, his contract is perfect for that. It gives him that 1 year. They want to go for the 5th championship. They are, as they are right now, they're set to do that. Now, is Jrue Holiday a better player than Chris Paul right now? I would say yes. Is he a better fit for the Warriors? I would say probably, because Drew's a great teammate. He's a legitimate elite defensive player. Chris Paul is not that anymore. And so you look at all those factors, and it just seems to me that, it just makes more sense to kind of stand pat with what they have. And also, if they do that, again, it enhances their credibility because that's what they've been saying they love all along, all summer long. So I just, can it happen? Of course, anything can happen. We saw that yesterday. But do I think it will happen? I just don't see it. I think it's a real long shot to happen right now.
Monty, it's interesting because while I hear everything that you're saying about the challenges that are associated with it, when we simplify it to those two answers you just gave, is he a better player and is he a better fit? Doesn't that go with the organization openly stating in recent times, look, we all chips in the middle of the table for the rest of Steph Curry's career, right? And so wouldn't this fit with that?
It would fit in the sense that you're getting a player who is a real defensive player, legitimate defensive stopper, I'm going to say. And if you look at the Warriors roster, who are their defensive stoppers? I think you've got three of them right now. You've got Wiggins, who's really good. You've got Gary Payton, who's the second, who's also really good. And you got Kuminga, who is good now but can be better. You got three guys that you can stick on somebody. And if you're gonna send Kuminga out and bring in Jrue Holiday, then you minimize GP2, who is a part of their culture already. They paid a pretty steep price to bring him back earlier this year. So I think as a front office, you want to have stability. And I think if they were to say, you know what, to hell with Chris Paul now, screw stability, we're going to go for Jrue Holiday, even if it's going to cost us a ton next year. I wouldn't understand that move.
And let's just assume then that they stand pat with Chris Paul and they don't make this long shot as you described it. How does he fit, Monty? And do you think that the idea of CP3 in the starting lineup is a temporary thing, or can they actually work with that really small ball lineup?
No, I don't think Chris Paul belongs in the starting lineup. I mean, plain and simple. I know the Warriors are kind of hemming and hawing about it and dancing around it, but the idea of his best value is to lead the second unit, and of course there will be times when he plays with starters. No problem there. The Warriors have a bunch of veterans on this team, and they will need nights off. They will need, no matter what the league says about load management, there will be nights when the Warriors are going to have to give some of their 30-plus guys a break, and so Chris Paul will get plenty of minutes and plenty of time. The priority for Chris Paul is to keep him healthy. Keep him healthy. So if they're able to do that into the postseason, it's a victory. And you can't keep Chris Paul healthy if he's going to play 82 games and play 35 minutes a night. Neither of those two things are going to happen. They're not in the cards. So I like what Chris can do for those guys in that second unit. I mean, I think Chris Paul gives the Warriors a chance to properly evaluate a guy like Kuminga. If Kuminga can't flourish with Chris Paul, he ain't the guy they thought he was going to be.
Right.
And they will know that. They will know that because, let's face it, Jordan Poole was not going to be the guy who set up Jonathan Kuminga for buckets. He was not going to be the guy who spoon-fed J.K. And so you bring in Chris Paul, which that's what he does. DeAndre Jordan was he was a zero on the offensive end until he got to Lob City. Well, Lob City, who was the quarterback there? CP3. So it's just Blake Griffin. Who was he? He was a great athlete, but what kind of game did he have? Well, Chris Paul made him an all-star. So it's all these things you look at, and if you're the Warriors, you're thinking, you know what? Let's really see what we have with Kuminga, because they don't really know. They see flashes, and if he can't flourish under with Chris Paul guiding him along and helping him out, then maybe they can know to cut bait, and rather than give him a big contract. So there's other factors in play here, but I think Chris Paul's situation, the contract, it's ideal. But no, if he wants to start, that makes no sense to me. Who's he going to replace? Looney, their best rebounder, on a team that needs rebounding?
Mm-hmm.
You're going to break up the best backcourt of all time, for Chris Paul at 38?
I like Steph as a six-man, Monty.
Monty, you know what the question is he going to be okay with it? And should the Warriors even worry about that?
He has to be. If he's not, that's on him. Chris, what's more important to you, starting or having a chance to win and maximizing the roster you have. And if he says, well, I want to start, I don't care about the roster, well, then the Warriors just screwed up. They made a mistake.
I love it. I love it. Yep.
That's great stuff,
Monty. Great stuff, man. Thank you so much for jumping in.
All right, guys.
Okay,
Take
there
care,
it is.
Monty.
Monte Poole, NBC Sports Bay
It's
Area.
great.